Hello, welcome to Breaking Barriers and Collaborative Care. My name is Courtney, and this is episode 6, where we aim to bridge the gap between healthcare professionals and patients, providing valuable insights, discussing common challenges, and exploring innovative solutions. I'm thrilled to announce that we have Ruth Wilcock here today, who is from OBIA, or the Ontario Brain Injury Association. She has worked in community services for 37 years. She is the Chief Executive Officer of OBIA and has been with the organization since 2004. She has an intense passion for serving those in our society who are hurting and in need of support. Prior to joining OBIA, Ruth served for 13 years as Executive Director for a long-term residential program for women struggling with life-controlling problems, including substance use, emotional difficulties, and those who have encountered problems with the criminal justice system. Ruth is a registered psychotherapist with the College of Registered Psychotherapists of Ontario and is an active member of the Canadian Association of Psychodynamic Therapists. So Ruth, you come with a very wide background. You've been working with folks for a very, very long time. What kind of led you into, I want to dive right in.
Sure, let's go. Let's go, Courtney.
How you got here. How did you get to OBIA first is what I want to know. Let's talk about you before we get into a little bit about the organization.
I mean, we don't want to go back too far in history, but I always have had a passion for helping people. And I knew that, when I was going to school, this is what I wanted to do, was to help people. And I initially got involved with, as you said, working with women with life-controlling problems such as substance use and emotional problems and intersections with the criminal justice system, and was there for 17 years. And very intense work, very rewarding work, but very intense work. Mm-hmm. And then the opportunity came along with OBIA. It will be 20 years. In fact, I think it's June 4th. It was my first day.
Congratulations!
20 years with OBIA. And incredible. It has just been an incredibly wonderful experience. And not too long ago, somebody said to me, what's the best thing about working at OBIA? And I said, truly, the best thing at working at OBIA is the people, by far. And there's just so many wonderful people who are living with brain injuries, and just the opportunity to meet with them and talk to them and hear their stories and help them. And then just the wonderful people in the field. Mm-hmm. There are just so many incredibly dedicated people. And then, of course, our staff team is wonderful, too, which I shouldn't just say, of course, because I think we're actually very fortunate to have such an incredible staff team that really does care for people living with brain injury. So, yeah, that's just a little bit of how I got here.
That's fantastic. And previously on our very first episode, we actually had a survivor who just had incredible things about OBIA and local brain injury associations. She just couldn't say enough good things. And if you haven't seen that episode, I really recommend that you go back and watch our very first episode with Madeline, so you get a little bit of context.
Well, I will 1,000% do that, because I love Madeline. I've known Madeline for years, and she's just a wonderful person and a very passionate person. And so I will absolutely do that.
Great. And I bring that up just because for our listeners, I think it's good for them to get a little context of things we may be talking about here. She kind of introduces the idea of the organization, I think, very well, and why it's so important to survivors to have these organizations. So I would love if you could talk a little bit about what the role of OBIA is for folks with brain injuries, and how that breaks down into local or brain injury associations as well.
Absolutely. So the Ontario Brain Injury Association, or acronym, as you described well, OBIA, we are the provincial organization. So we support the province of Ontario. And we have been around we are hedging to 40 years. And I think it's really important for your listeners to know that why OBIA began and who started OBIA. So it was actually started by two family members whose children had sustained brain injuries. And close to 40 years ago, there was really not a lot of support for people living with brain injuries. Even the worst or the most severely injured were actually sent to the States for care. Mm-hmm. And And there was even less support for families. So these two families literally around a kitchen table got together and said, we've got to do something. And so that's the history of OBIA. And I think that that's really important because I always hold, when I talk about OBIA, not just talking about OBIA, but as I lead the organization, we always hold it was started by individuals with lived experience with brain injury. And we always have to keep that at our forefront. Yes, we have a lot of programs and we have a lot of services, but the input into those programs and services from people living with brain injury is absolutely paramount. So that's us as a provincial organization. If you want me, Courtney, I can go into a little bit more of what we do.
I would love that if you could tell folks listening a little bit more about your role for individuals and their families. I think it'd be really helpful.
I would absolutely love to, because, one of the things that I often hear, Courtney, is, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I found you, but I wish I'd have known about you 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. And so being able to talk about this on this podcast is wonderful. And hopefully, there might be people listening that, maybe are like, I need help now. And thank goodness I know about it now and didn't find out about it 5 years later. So I'm going to say the corner post in our organization for support is our 1-800 Helpline, which has been in existence from the beginning. And our 1-800 Helpline is not just simply a helpline, but there's a lot that we do with that. So people can call that line and they will talk to most likely our registered social worker. And people call, I just saw our stats, about 46% of people call about education. So they want to know more about their brain injury, how to cope with their brain injury. About 40+% also call about services. I need services. Where can I get services? And then the other is for other things, including sometimes legal, they're having legal matters. Not that we provide information on legal matters, but we will give them resources. And then we also, sometimes that conversation, when we're training staff, I always say in that position, you really are a detective, because what one person calls for, I remember somebody calling for her husband sustained a brain injury because he was a diabetic and he had lost consciousness for a while. And she was just looking for, just a little bit of information. But as our support worker just spoke to her, it unfolded. There was so much going on. He needed so many more supports at home. And we were able to help get her those supports. So rather than just a quick 10-minute call, let me give you some information, it's rarely that. And and sometimes people call and don't know what they actually need. And so that's just so important. Then from those calls, sometimes advocacy, everything from, I need an accommodation. I'm at college and I have a brain injury and I need accommodation and, they're not accommodating me. Or it could be returning to work, the same thing. It could be, and many times it's, I need services. Mm-hmm. And that can be, maybe they were injured in a motor vehicle collision and their dollars have run out. Or they were injured where there's no dollars available. And so we do our best to try to find them services that are free. And that, and that takes a lot of digging to get the right fits. So again, that's, I don't want to go on too much about that. Just very quickly, you have peer support program. And peer support is really becoming recognized as an integral part of recovery after brain injury. I was reading an article in our magazine that's going to be published just in June, and the person was talking about how, they went home and their family did their best to understand, and their clinicians did their best to understand. They said, but when I talk to somebody about like my experience with somebody who's had that same experience, it's life-changing. And so we have a peer support program that's available across the province. We also have online concussion support groups, which now it's like, oh, okay, you got an online concussion support group. However, pre-COVID, we had the vision to do it, and we were the only ones doing it.
Wow, so you're ahead of your time.
We were ahead of our time. And so now when I say we have online concussion support group, people are like, oh, okay. But then, when we were promoting it back in 2018, I remember promoting it at a conference, and people were like, this is amazing, Ruth. I can't believe it. And it's led by registered social workers. So that's a really important part as well. And it's free. And I want to just mention, truly, this is free, free, free. And there's not a lot of things when it comes to brain injury care that are free.
Hey, there's not much just period. That's free.
That's true. I went and parked over there in the parking lot. Not free. Not expensive. $2, whatever, but not free. Yeah. And then we have, I'll just go over a little bit more. We have a new program called Return to Work. And so we received a grant from the government, a substantial grant to create a return to work program for those living with concussion and brain injuries. And so we have an occupational therapist and a social worker, because when we put the grant in, what we hear from people, the mental health piece component after brain injury is so important. And we felt if OBIA is going to design a program for return to work, the OT, yes, absolutely. We need that OT, the occupational therapist, but we need somebody to address the mental health, because the mental health piece after concussion is huge. And so we have two workers that will work one-on-one with employers and employees, and then they'll take an online training course that we've developed. So, and then we do a bunch of other stuff too. And, but that's our sort of our core. We do education and other things, but I want to talk about maybe some of the community associations as well. So,
of course, absolutely. But this is great. It allows folks listening to really understand the breadth of what you do. It's not one lane. You guys really are all encompassing. And I really want to highlight what you said about it. When folks call, you may not have the service that they need, but you're able to connect them. So you may not be able to help them with the legal advice, but folks can reach out to help navigate those systems.
Exactly.
And again, I'm going to go back to our first episode with Madeline, as she said that was really the hardest part for herself and a lot of other survivors, is navigating these avenues when you don't have the 100% function of your brain. Navigating these areas can be so difficult, not having funds to help get these services. So having an organization like OBIA, and then the community organizations like we'll get into talking about, is really life-changing for these folks. It can go from, I don't know even where to start, to, wow, I have a really fulfilling, great life.
I think that, you've really hit the nail on the head there, Courtney, because our system is difficult to navigate without any cognitive issues.
Exactly.
It is not easy. And especially when you're looking now for specialized support, and I want to go back to that mental health piece, because it really is a piece attached to brain injury. And it's, I want to validate that, people, their lives have changed, and they've had a lot of losses. Even it could be the loss of job. It could be loss of relationships, the loss of ability to do things. There's grieving. There's a lot of things that accompany a brain injury. And it's really important that we holistically take care of a person living with a brain injury, and that one does not diminish the other. And I know that some people often feel, when they go to sometimes their doctors, they're like, well, the doctor's like, well, it's just mental health. And first of all, that statement, it's just mental health, is quite offensive, because mental health is real. And, another thing that often comes across, and this can happen in litigation, it's like, well, somebody maybe had some mental health issues before their injury, and now they have mental health issues, anxiety, depression, generalized depression or so forth after. And then it's like, yeah, but that was a pre-existing condition, so we're not So that has nothing to do with the concussion. And the bottom line is these people were functioning well. And then the concussion happened, or the brain injury. So, but for the concussion, but for the brain injury, they were able to cope. And I think it's just really important that we don't make people feel bad because they might have some mental health issues after their injury. And there are things mechanically, I'm not a doctor, but there are things that are happening in the brain that affects one's emotional health. Emotional health and well-being. And so I just want to, anybody listening, Courtney, to your audience, just really validate that it's okay if you're struggling. Like, it really is okay.
I'm going to quote Minister Tubolo from our last episode. It's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
Your mental health is important. And if you're listening right now and even this one piece is what's you're taking, I hope that it sinks in and that you know that you're not alone and that this is real and there are folks out there who want to help and who are trained to help. So I just want to take a quick moment to really highlight that piece before we continue talking about our community organizations.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that, Courtney, because there's still so much stigma. I mean, people who sustain brain injuries, unfortunately, there's stigma about brain injuries and there's stigma about mental health. And if you have both, and maybe I shouldn't use this word ridiculous, but it is ridiculous because it's a health issue. And if I was coming in here today and I banged my elbow really hard and cracked it and went to the hospital and got treated for a cracked elbow, I don't have any real stigma about this cracked elbow, right? But if somebody else goes in and says, I'm really struggling with anxiety or depression, well, just try a little harder. Be a little more positive. Go for a walk, which these are things that are okay in the context of getting better, but they're not going to just be the magic bullet. And so that's another thing, stigma around concussion and brain injury and mental health is still there. We've come a long way, but it's still there and something we need to really advocate about. So anyway, I won't, I'll let you lead us on to another subject.
No, this is great. This is really great discussion. And I'm hoping that those listening feel the sincerity behind the words that you're saying, because it is important that folks know they're not alone. There is stigma. And hopefully my real goal through this podcast is to show folks there is a better way to work collaboratively, but more importantly, to reduce stigma for some of these things.
Absolutely.
And it's important. So thank you
You're
for
welcome.
raising this, because I wasn't even expecting us to take that path, but it's a really, really good one. So thank you for bringing this along. Back, continuing with that train of thought. So we have OBIA,
yes.
Who offers all of these great things, which is our provincial body.
Yes.
But folks also can get links to more localized associations in their communities, which may be able to offer community-specific resources.
Absolutely. So there are currently 21 local community associations across the province, and they are affiliated with OBIA. They are absolutely autonomous and independent, have their own boards of directors, do their own programs, but there is an affiliation so that we can work together on projects like our peer support, which we do actually in collaboration with the community associations. And I've been fortunate to visit many, many community associations, and they're very different. I'm going to say they are foundationally the same, because foundationally the same, I'm going to say, is that they are there to support people living with brain injury. What they do in their own communities is inevitably unique to their community. But I want to say that one of the greatest things that I think the community associations offer, and I'm using the word community, is community. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's the most powerful aspect of the associations, because so many people, as I mentioned before, have lost their communities and have lost their friends, have lost their family. They don't feel that they belong. isolation is just huge for survivors of brain injury. And, where they can come to a place where they can absolutely be themselves, where people aren't looking at them differently, perhaps because they might, have some speech problems, or maybe they have some walks with their gaits, or, whatever it is. I think a true community is a place where you can render and receive support from one another. And that is what the community associations do. Render and receive support from one another.
And you want to talk about, something positive for your mental health.
Yes,
community,
absolutely,
is that foundation. Isolation is that number one piece of where your mental health will start to diminish when you're all alone, really getting stuck in that thought process of what you've lost, of what you're unable to do, where now you're suddenly surrounded by folks who understand you to some degree. You have shared experience, shared goals, I'm sure to some degree. That must really bring folks out of their shell.
Absolutely. When I've talked to people living with brain injury at the community association, they're like, this is home. This is home, and this is one of the places that I feel the most safest. And I think that that's amazing. If we can provide a community that provides that mental and emotional sense of safety. And I just have tremendous admiration for the work that is being done, because it's very different. There are social programs, there are educational programs, there are support groups, there are recreational programs. One of the things that we, I'm going to say, as OBIA and the associations have done a number of years ago, and some associations are still doing this, during Brain Injury Awareness Month, we had a campaign called Unmasking Brain Injury. And what unmasking brain injury is it is a blank mask, and people get to draw the story of their experience, of their trauma on this mask, and then just write a little piece under it. And I believe across the province, with all of the association participating, it's well over 3,000 masks were produced. And some are still doing it because it's been so powerful in two sides. Really powerful for the survivor because they get to write their story, and really powerful for people looking at it. And a few years ago, we went to Queen's Park, and there was something like 52 MPPs came out to our display, which is a huge amount if you want to get MPPs out.
Absolutely.
But it was like, it just hit it home. These are real people. These aren't just, we can sit here and talk about stats, which are important when it comes to funding, but it really just is about people. And
what an impactful installation! Like, to see that
it's profound. And these were displayed and still are in libraries, at malls, so the general public can see. And I remember one story. I get passionate about this, Courtney.
We love it.
And lots of stories. But I remember hearing a story of a person at a brain injury association. They'd been coming for 5 years and barely said 2 words. Once they were able to put that story on the mask, something just opened up in them, and they were able to come out of themselves. And it was really a transformative experience for them.
It's just amazing. It seems like the services and the community and all of these things, when you think about it, are things that should be offered. It's like, of course, but it's not that simple.
It's not that simple, and it's really difficult. I'm just going to really put a plug out there, because most of the brain injury associations do not have government funding. There are a couple that do, but most do not. And so they really run on a shoestring budget. They run on volunteers, and I know Courtney, your mom, has done a lot of work and a lot of volunteer work for her local association. And we have to applaud those people as well. And, some of them may have 1 or 2 people that work there, but the amount of work that they're doing is incredible. And if we can help support local community associations, I'm just going to put a pitch out for that, because they don't receive government funding. And the work that they do is so important because it's free. And with brain injury, and understandably, rehabilitation is not free. We get that. We need medical people involved. But sometimes survivors do need supports that are free because they just don't have the dollars. And so it's I can't say enough about the work that our associations do.
I'm so glad you brought that piece up because I think it's really important to highlight that a lot of these organizations are running based off of volunteers.
Yes.
Some of the folks are professionals, OTs, SLPs. If you don't know these acronyms, go back and watch our last episode, catch up. But these professionals who generally do have to charge for their services, but sometimes they are now volunteering in these organizations on an educational basis or what have you. So I really want to highlight that these people are doing it because they believe in this, because they know how important it is, because they care, because they see how important it is. They see the outcomes for the folks utilizing their services. So if that doesn't speak to the importance of these organizations, that these folks are willing to do it just because they believe in it, I don't know what else can.
When I think about that, Courtney, I think about we are very fortunate in this field, in the brain injury field, and those who work, professionals who work in the community, because I know so many people who work in the community that give back to the community and give back to their local associations. And I think it's really, really important that they are also applauded for that. Most of the people I meet, it's just my job. It's a passion to really help people. And they go above and beyond what, is required of them professionally. And so I want to give a shout out to them too, because our associations couldn't operate if it wasn't for these people volunteering their time.
And I do know that the local associations do their yearly fundraising.
Yes.
So if you want to look into your community to find out who your local organization is, and you're able to help by donating funds, by donating time, there's lots of ways that you can assist with your local organization. I definitely recommend that you do that. And I'm sure you do.
Yes, and it's really easy. If you go to our website, which is www.obia.ca, we have a listing of all of the associations across the province with hyperlinks to their website. So if somebody's listening to us from Sarnia and it's like, do I have an association in Sarnia? Just go to our website. You'll see it on there. Click on it, and it'll take you to the Sarnia website.
Perfect. And if you're watching on YouTube, we'll have a link to OBIA below as well in the description. So you can just click that link. It'll take you to OBIA, and then you can find all of the rest of the information there as well. And if you are someone who has acquired brain injury yourself or a family member, and you're not involved in your local brain injury association, I would definitely recommend that they get involved and plugged in, because as you stated, it's not just about the educational type of resources, but that community piece. I know locally they're always doing really fun things, bowling or what have you. So it always looks like a great time. Yes. Lots of smiles and laughs always. And it's something I think that is great for, as you said, just that overall mental health piece. We all need laughter and friends and community. So I love that you brought up that piece. I really do think that is the most important part of these brain injury associations, bringing folks together.
Absolutely. Community, a place to render and receive support from one another.
Oh,
true community.
Love that. Thank you, Ruth. Is there anything else that you think is important for folks to know about either community organizations or OBIA or yourself?
Well, just that we are here. And I should make something clear. When people call our 1-800 helpline, we always, because we're provincial, we will always direct them to their local association as well, because there's, certain things that we can do at this level, but then it comes right back down to, but where can you get support where you live? And so that's an important piece. One other piece I didn't mention, which again, the community associations are very involved in. We have a research study called the Brain Injury Impact Study. And we have had, I believe, well over 1,600 people in this study. And it really is talking about the long-term outcomes of brain injury, what services were received, what weren't received, why weren't they received, the type of injury. And we've had tremendous response from, again, many of the members of the local community associations, but that's also anybody. You don't have to be a member of association to participate in it. And we're just in the middle of looking at the data, and we really hope to use the data to advocate for more funding. And, my dream, I don't know if it'll ever come true, but my dream would be, let's get our local brain injury associations funded and get sustainable funding for them. And maybe some of our data can lead to that.
Absolutely. So let's get you connected to Minister Tobolo and ask him for some funding, as this is something we spoke about on our last episode of the importance of mental health services for folks with brain injuries. As I do know, this is an area where there's a gap in our province.
Absolutely.
And a lot of folks who utilize our mental health services, period, do self-report as having some sort of brain injury.
Absolutely.
So I do think that it is really important that our government looks further into funding these organizations, and also our healthcare providers working collaboratively, which it does seem like they are doing to some degree, which is great to see that happening.
Absolutely. Connect me and I will speak even more passionately about that need, because, truly, like with most sincerity, the community associations shouldn't have to be worrying day in and day out, how are they going to meet their bills? What they should be focused on is what programs can we do next. So.
Exactly. They should really be focused on the folks who they're helping and not worrying about where the next dollar is coming from. But thank you, Ruth, so much.
No problem, Courtney. Absolutely my pleasure.
Oh, pleasure's all mine. Trust me, this has been amazing. Again, this is Ruth, the CEO of OBIA, the Ontario Brain Injury Association. We're so grateful that you made time for us today. And if you have any questions at all about anything you may have heard today on the show, please reach out. And we have links below for more information. So thank you again.
Great.
And tune in next time where we break barriers and talk about collaborative care.
Thank you for having me, Courtney.